away. CCTV footage actually captured the exact moment they left the shopping center with him, and you probably may want to brace for this next part. The boys apparently dragged James for over 2 miles through Liverpool. They ended up at this railway line near Walton Park Cemetery, and that's where things got really bad. They tortured him for hours. They threw that blue paint right into his eyes, kicked him, stomped on him, and started chucking bricks at his head. They even stuffed batteries into his mouth and dropped a 22-pound piece of metal on him. James had 42 separate injuries when it was all over. Then they put his body on the train tracks, thinking it looked like some kind of accident, and sure thing, a train came through and tore him in half. When the police caught up with the two, it obviously got everyone wondering how the hell 10-year-olds could do something like that. That's when they found out that it all traced back to when Vanibla's dad had rented the horror movie Child's Play 3.
I look, you want to watch this video too. This one. Fuck it.
Fictional characters. We all love
Fuck
them,
it.
right?
2
Whether
videos.
they be live action or animated, I'm willing to bet we've all had our heartstrings pulled by them one way or another. But what about being inspired by said fictional character to commit a gruesome crime such as murder? That is what today's video is dedicated to. Murderers who blamed fictional characters. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. My name is Tuv, and I don't know about where you guys live, but over here in LA, it is extremely hot. So that's why your boy can't wear long sleeves for maybe the entirety of summer. And I thought I was still gonna look like an investigator, but
it's
I think
hot. It's
I
hot here too.
lame.
It's
just
fall.
with a short sleeve and the
How
suspenders.
long was this video?
Yeah,
How long
this
ago
is
was
I
3
look
months
like
ago?
I'm cosplaying a nerd or something. But let me know what you guys think. Do I look lame? Do I look cool?
I fuck with the suspenders.
And if you're not subscribed yet, don't even worry about that. I will
I'm
earn
being
your
so dead
subscription
ass.
by the end of this video.
I like
with that being
suspenders.
said, let's get right into the topic. Mark Twitchell, the Canadian who wanted to be Dexter. This seemingly average filmmaker transformed his garage into a kill room with plastic sheeting.
Dexter's so tough. I haven't seen it, but all the edits I see, don't worry, I'm gonna watch it soon. Don't want to hear it. I'm gonna watch it soon. But all the edits and just knowing the story of Dexter, like he's a crime scene analyst, like CSI, and he solves crimes. Literally, what I think what the bio says is he solved crimes during the daytime and caused them at night. Like that shit, that's so tough. That's a tough ass plot line.
Steel drums for body parts, and a butcher kit. First of all, no, that's not the plot of a Dexter episode. And second, yes, that actually happened. This is Mark Twitchell, a Canadian man who didn't just binge watch Dexter, he literally tried to become him. So overall, I'd say his story is as strange as you would expect. Back in October of 2008, for instance, this 38-year-old man named Johnny Altinger went missing in Edmonton. That's somewhere in Alberta, Canada. His friends started getting these weird emails supposedly of him saying he had met someone.
These are replies. I've met an extraordinary woman named Jen who has offered to take me on a nice long tropical vacation. We'll be staying in her winter home in Costa Rica. Phone number to follow soon. I won't be back in town until December 10th, but I will be checking my email periodically. See you around the holidays, Johnny.
Meaning Jen, and suddenly took off to Costa Rica. But then here's the thing. His passport was still sitting at home. As they began to dig deeper, they found out that just before
I feel like Johnny is such a tough name. I don't know why. Sorry, just had a glaze there for a second.
vanishing, Altinger had indeed told friends he was meeting a woman from a dating site, but the directions to what was supposed to be her place, though, didn't lead to her or a main house for that matter. They led to a detached garage rented by Mark Twitchell. Now, far from what might be typical to one, he was said to not look anything like a killer. He was in fact apparently almost good looking, and honestly he lived pretty averagely. Just a normal 29-year-old dad with a wife and little daughter, making indie films and trying to break into the industry. That's what made everything that followed so disturbing.
Bro just had the starter package of life.
I mean, this dude
I feel like everyone's trying to get there.
was so obsessed with Dexter Morgan that he literally changed his profile picture to Michael C. Hall, the actor who played Dexter. Although he kind of left trails everywhere, and that's how he'd get caught. For example, he chat online with this woman, Renee Waring, about hypothetical murder scenarios, and one time, he straight up told her, "You do it like Dexter because Dexter shows you how to do it all the time." Then, as police went through his stuff, they found this deleted file on his computer called SK Confessions. SK, you know, serial killer. And it literally began with, This is a story of my progression into becoming a serial killer, but that's not the only thing they found there. The amount of evidence was actually insane. Blood spatter all over the walls. They even found a fragment of a human tooth in there. Also, pretty weirdly, for almost 2 years, Twitchell wouldn't say where he put Altinger's body. That was until finally, in 2010, when he led cops to a sewer just a block from his parents' house. By this point, there was no escape. Although he tried this bizarre defense, arguing that all of this had been for artistic gains, some project he called multi-angle psychosis layering entertainment. He actually claimed Altinger attacked him first, but of course nobody was buying that. In 2011, they gave him life with no parole for 25 years. Today, he's still locked up, still claiming he's innocent, saying it was for the people who enjoy watching murder on TV. Charles Ng was inspired to kidnap, torture, and murder young women by the John Fowles novel, The Collector. So there's this 1963 novel named The Collector about a lonely man who kidnaps a young woman and keeps her locked in his basement, convinced she'll eventually fall in love with him. Most people read it as a disturbing psychological thriller and move on with their lives. But
trying to give him Stockholm syndrome.
Ng, well, they read it almost as if it was an instruction manual. This happened back in the 1980s. Lake was the this guy obsessed with preparing for nuclear war, while Ng, who you can see here with the thick rimmed glass.
And that's what people think. People think that, like, books and movies and stuff give you a step-by-step guide on how things should work. Like, how things would work. It never goes down like that. Never. Anything you see in the movie never goes down like that, for real. For real.
Glasses that seem, and I'm generalizing a bit here, to be a signature psycho look. Sorry to all my thick frame glasses people, didn't mean to diss you there. I'm sure you guys are not serial killers.
I have medical glasses.
Well, he was a former Marine with a rather troubled past, and when they found each other, they created something absolutely horrifying. Lake became completely obsessed with the book and started calling his plan Operation Miranda, named after the kidnapped woman in the novel. He built a concrete bunker on his remote California property, complete with hidden rooms, two-way mirrors, and a list of rules for what he calls his M-ladies. Let me read a few for you. I must be ready to service my master. I must never speak unless spoken to. I must never show disrespect, either verbally or silently. I must obey immediately and without question or comment. So as you can imagine, this was more like an SA torture chamber. There were tools, handcuffs, women's clothing, and videotapes. Also, perhaps these two weren't the smartest people in the world because they had documented their crimes, showing them torturing terrified women while threatening them with death. Anyway, their sick fantasy came crashing down when Ng tried shoplifting a vice from a hardware store. He ran off, leaving Lake to deal with the mess. Lake tried to smooth things over by offering to pay for the stolen item, but police noticed that the car Lake was driving belonged to a missing person. When they searched it, they found a gun with an illegal silencer. He was arrested, but then decided he didn't want to face justice, and so soon after, he swallowed a cyanide pill hidden in his clothes. He died 4 days later. Police went over to their house and found over 40 pounds of human bone fragments buried around the property. While they could only confirm 11 murders, investigators believe the actual count could be as high as 25 victims. Their victims are still being...
I don't remember.
The car Lake was driving belonged to a missing person. When they searched it, they found a gun with an illegal silencer. He was arrested, but then decided he didn't want to face justice, and so soon after, he swallowed a cyanide pill hidden in his clothes. He died 4 days later. Police went over to their house and found over 40 pounds of human bone fragments buried around the property. While they could only confirm 11 murders, investigators believe the actual count could be as high as 25 victims. Their victims are still being discovered, while Ng waits patiently on death row. Linda Duffy and the Bugs Bunny defense. Next up is a couple who like playing risky games to spice things up.
Bugs Bunny
Meet
defense?
Linda and Patrick Duffy. This couple apparently had this thing where they played around quoting cartoon characters and joking just like a couple of kids would. But in April of 2007, these games, silly or not, turned deadly when Linda shot Patrick twice in the head and then claimed it was all because of Bugs Bunny. Yeah, Bugs Bunny. So here's what Linda told the police. She said that she and Patrick were fooling around that day when she picked up one of his revolvers. They did this thing where they talk like cartoon characters, so Linda asked in her best Elmer Fudd voice, I'm gonna impersonate it for you guys, so enjoy this. No more bullets. That sounds so bad. Oh my god. Best Elmer Fudd voice, I'm gonna impersonate it for you guys, so enjoy this. No more bullets.
I got you now. Silly boy. Hey! You, come back here. Oh. Hey, what's the big idea?
Hey, what's the big idea? Wrap it up. Wrap it up.
That sounds so bad. Oh my god. Oh my god, I didn't expect it to sound horrible. I'm not gonna say that again. Oh no, I have to say it again. Apparently Patrick says, okay, I'm gonna say it again. When Patrick supposedly replied, saying the same thing, no more no more bullets. Okay, so after that exchange, she thought the gun was empty and began fan firing it instantly, like in the old Western movies. Fan firing means you hold down the trigger and rapidly pull back the hammer to shoot multiple rounds quickly. She claimed she was trying to impress Patrick when he suddenly leaned forward into the line of fire. Boom. 2 shots to the head. She then called the police and admitted it all right there. I mean, it was an accident, right? Well, the first big red flag was that he'd been shot twice. And the second red flag was that Linda claimed she'd never fired a gun in her life. But a firearms expert proved that fan firing a double-action revolver like the one Linda used was nearly impossible for an amateur. You'd have to pull the trigger, release it, fan the hammer, pull again, all while dealing with the deafening noise and recoil. That's when Linda suddenly, and out of nowhere and suspiciously, remembered she and Patrick had been practicing fan firing for years. Funny how that detail just seemed to slip
your mind. Fan firing, like you're gonna tell someone you have no gun experience, but you're over here fan firing that hoe. There's no way you forget that shit.
Her mind. But her problems were just beginning. They also found that she must have had to be just inches from Patrick for the first shot, and also that the second had caused a blood pool where she claimed she had been standing. Weird, because if that distance were true, she would have been covered in blood as well, yet she wasn't. So what really happened? Well, investigators believe Linda shot Patrick once while he was sleeping, realized he wasn't dead, then moved closer and fired again. So an execution, not an accident, but why? That's what we don't really know. Anyway, for her action, she got 40 years to life, although she's still claiming that it was all just a terrible accident. John Venables and Robert Thompson, inspired by a scene from Child's Play 3. In February of 1993, these two 10-year-old boys named John Venables and Robert Thompson were supposed to be in school, but they weren't. Instead, they were hanging around a shopping center.
These little jids are young. I didn't even peep that it said about Child's Play. Child's Play is Chucky. So they were inspired by the doll? They didn't kill their teacher, did they? Did they ruler that bitch? Sorry, no.
In bootleg.
Cut that.
England, shoplifting candy and basically looking for trouble, which they did find. By the end of that day, they had apparently found a way to do one of the most horrible things. It all started casually with them watching families with young children all day, sort of like they were browsing at a store. And
I don't even know what
at this
happened.
Point, they'd already nicked sweets, batteries, a troll doll, and weirdly enough, a can of blue paint. At 3:42 p.m., they spotted 2-year-old James Bourget with his mom in a butcher shop. They marked him and hovered around. The second she let go of his hand to pay, they walked right up, took James, and led him away. CCTV footage actually captured the exact moment they left the shopping center with him, and you probably may want to brace for this next part. The boys apparently dragged James for over 2 miles through Liverpool. They ended up at this railway line near Walton Park Cemetery, and that's where things got really, really bad. They tortured him for hours. They threw that blue paint right into his eyes, kicked him, stomped on him, and started chucking bricks at his head. They even stuffed batteries into his mouth and dropped a 22-pound piece of metal on him. James had 42 separate injuries when it was all over. Then they put his body on the train tracks, thinking it looked like some kind of accident, and sure thing, a train came through and tore him in half. When the police caught up with the two, it obviously got everyone wondering how the hell 10-year-olds could do something like that. That's when they found out that it all traced back to when Venables' dad had rented the horror movie Child's Play 3. You know, the one with the killer doll Chucky? They were trying to imitate some of the movie. For example, there's this scene where Chucky gets hit with blue paint during some paintball thing, very similar to the kids using the stolen blue paint to hit James in the eyes. Anyway, the boys got convicted and locked up until they were 18, then rather strangely, got released with completely new identities. Although one of them, Venables, couldn't keep his hands clean, and he's been back to prison twice now for having CSAM images on his computer. He's still locked up today, probably as he should. Gabriel Hikari Yad Elohim and Ichigo Kurita.
I don't know what he said for that last part, but I have a strong possibility of what he said. I'm not going back. But yeah, he deserves to stay in there. But they released him, and they released both of them, and gave them new identities. Like, I understand that happened when they're 10 or 8 or something. But jeez, that's a
Saki from Bleach. This one is wild. It was inspired by an anime series in a very unhinged
Bleach.
way. In 2017, Gabriel Hikari Yad Elohim went to an apartment building in Auckland with a sex worker to buy some meth. She told him to wait downstairs while she went up to make the deal, then basically
They on that meth in Japan? They be doing that meth? You telling me there's meth heads in Japan? I learn something new every day.
Rob him, escaping from an upstairs balcony with his $200. Gabriel was absolutely furious. So what did he do? He went straight to 69-year-old Michael Mulholland's apartment and murdered him. Yeah, killing a person that wasn't even involved with the initial situation. Gabriel had never met this guy before in his life. In fact, Mulholland was just some random neighbor who happened to be at home that night. That, though, had not stopped Gabriel from attacking him in the stairwell, kicking and stomping on his head for about 7 minutes straight. The poor guy suffered 90 separate blows and died from blunt force trauma to his head, face, and abdomen. When police arrested this psycho, he started speaking in Japanese and acting really weird. The next day, in the interview room,
So, wait, this didn't happen in Japan?
gave this whole monologue in Japanese that nobody could really make sense of at the time. His lawyers tried an insanity defense, saying he had schizophrenia and was hearing voices, seeing ghosts, and believed he was an anime character. Specifically, that he was part of this anime series called Bleach. Interestingly, they also discovered that Gabriel's real name wasn't even Gabriel Hikari Yad Elohim. That's just something he made up in 2012. He had also told doctors that his name was Yuki Watanabe and that he was Japanese. Turns out, he was actually Korean, and his real name is Jung Hoon Song. So his defense never stood a chance, and he got convicted of murder and was given life with no parole for 13 years. Nathaniel
So the whole time he had people thinking that he was Japanese. He's speaking Japanese. He has 3 different names. He has the one that he's gone with, Gabriel, I think that's what it was. Then Yuki, the one that he told his doctor. But he's really just some Korean.
White, inspired by the RoboCop murders from RoboCop 2. Meet Nathaniel White. Back in the 90s, he was just an ex-con trying to get his life together in upstate New York. Then he watched RoboCop 2, and according to him, that movie turned him into a serial killer. He ended up murdering 6 women. 6 murders that he claims because he watched RoboCop 2. Definitely not because he had a mental illness before that. It was because of the movie, guys. It was RoboCop 2. And all the murders from the first one were pretty horrific. The first one was actually in March of 1991. Picture this. A couple's walking along some abandoned railroad tracks in Middletown when they spot what they think is a discarded mannequin. But at a closer look, it's not. It's a human body. A body that turned out to have been that of 29-year-old Juliana Frank. She lay there naked, brutally stabbed over 40 times, and posed in a suggestive position. She was 4 months pregnant, and White had cut the fetus out of her body. When police eventually caught White over a year later, he said Juliana was the first, and that the way he killed her was inspired by RoboCop. In his words, there was a scene where someone gets their throat cut, then sliced straight down the chest to the stomach and left in a posed position. White said he copied it exactly as it was in the film. His second victim was 14-year-old Christine Klebb, a niece to his own girlfriend. Then came Loretta Huggins, a 34-year-old mother of 3 who was in the middle of packing to move back to her home country. She never got the chance. Next, he met cousins Angela Hopkins and Brenda Whiteside at a bar. He offered them a ride and ended up beating them to death in the woods. His final victim was 27-year-old Adrian Hunter. According to him, she asked him for money, so he stabbed her 47 times. Perfect reason.
What was common between all of them? What was the same between all of them? Got the same chair.
You stabbing someone, they just ask you for money, which I doubt that was the full story, but normal response. Anyway, he was eventually caught and convicted on all counts. He got 150 years to life. He's still locked up at Elmira Correctional Facility in New York. Stephen Miles blames Dexter and his alter ego Ed. Next up, we have a Dexter case again. But this time, it inspired a 16-year-old kid in England, Stephen Miles. And yeah, I know this isn't exactly the photo that screams, hey, just a normal kid. You could definitely tell that he was, not all the way there. Back then, he was an autistic teenager living with his family. He was really into horror movies, struggled socially, and became completely obsessed with the TV show Dexter. But in January of 2014, his obsession went way too far when he decided that he needed to kill someone and picked 17-year-old Elizabeth Thomas as his target. Now, you should know, and this is heartbreaking, Elizabeth was actually one of the few people who stood up for Stephen when others called him weird or different. She'd befriended him, the awkward kid he was, and genuinely tried to help him fit in. But that kindness is what made her the target. Steven called her his quote-unquote project, which is absolutely chilling because it understates what he was actually planning. On January 24th, he stabbed her in the head and back at his family's flat. But just like his TV hero Dexter, he didn't stop there. He grabbed saws and tools from his dad's tree surgery business and started dismembering her body, cutting off her legs and arm, then wrapping everything in cling film and stuffing the pieces into bin bags. Now, besides the Dexter stuff, Steven had apparently been telling his family about his alter ego named Ed, who supposedly instructed him to kill someone. When his sister came home about an hour after the murder, Steven just randomly told her that Ed made him do something bad. Now, you'd maybe think this sounds like a clear case of mental illness, right? Well, wrong. Psychiatric experts examined him and found he was neither schizophrenic or psychotic. They said this whole Ed thing was probably just anxiety related to his autism and some narcissistic personality traits. Bottom line, he knew exactly what he was doing. So for that, he got life with at least 25 years behind bars. Matthew Tinling blamed the movie Saw. If there's a movie franchise you'd expect to give someone ideas for bizarre killings, it would definitely be the Saw series. And yeah, it did just that. Matthew Tinling, who tortured and murdered his roommate by copying a scene straight from Saw 6. Matthew was living in a homeless shelter in London with 45-year-old Richard Hamilton, a former soldier who was
I can already tell this one's gonna be gut-wrenching. Going after the movie Saw. If you saw Saw, you'd understand. But killing, like inspired by that movie, I can only imagine the torture.
relying on disability payments. Both of these guys were using drugs, but Richard had something Matthew really wanted: money. Richard was getting about £300 every 2 weeks in disability benefits, which made him pretty much the richest guy around the place. In March of 2012, Matthew needed cash for crack cocaine, and he figured Richard was gonna have to provide it whether he wanted to or not. So he broke into Richard's room and started torturing the poor guy, trying to get his bank pin. And how was he torturing him, you may ask? Well, Matt had been watching Saw 6 on DVD, and there's this scene where the villain Jigsaw tries to cut through someone's spinal cord. So after stabbing Richard 17 times all over his head, neck, and legs, he decided he was going to recreate what he'd seen on TV. He went after Richard's spinal cord specifically, trying to slice right through it to paralyze him and kill him. The whole thing was just brutal and supposedly went on forever. Matthew eventually got what he was after and headed straight to a cash machine to grab 240 pounds for drugs. When police showed up, among other things, what they found among his belongings was that Saw 6 DVD. He got arrested and eventually convicted. Interestingly, in prison he kept attacking people, so they kept adding more time to his sentence. He can't even ask for parole until 2062, which means he'll probably be in his 70s before he has any shot at getting out.
Good. I
Daniel
hope he
Gonzalez
doesn't.
blamed Freddy Krueger. This one is about a guy who wanted to become a famous serial killer so badly that he decided to copy Freddy Krueger, just maybe without the scars on the face. His name was Daniel Gonzalez. He was 24, unemployed, and basically just sat around all day playing video games and binge watching horror movies. His mom had been trying to get him mental health help for years, even writing to her MP asking if her son literally had to commit murder to get some assistance. Turns out she got her answer the hard way. In September of 2004, Daniel grabbed some knives, Freddy Krueger style. His first target was a 61-year-old man named Peter King, who was just walking his dog in Portsmouth. Daniel walked right up to him and told him he was going to kill him. Luckily, Peter fought back and Daniel took off running. Next stop was Hove, where Daniel found 76-year-old Mary Harding. This time he changes the character and he's wearing a hockey mask like Jason from Friday the 13th, and he stabbed her to death. 2 days after that, Daniel completely lost it in London. At around 5 in the morning, he kills 46-year-old Kevin Malloy by stabbing him all over the face, neck, and body with knives he'd stolen from some department store. About an hour later, he breaks into somebody's house and stabs the guy who lives there, but this dude manages to fight him off. Then Daniel goes into a hardware store, buying himself a long knife, and heads over to Highgate where he murders this elderly couple, Derek and Jean Robinson, right in their own home. He told police later that killing them felt, and I quote, orgasmic, and was one of the best things he'd ever done. After that, he went to his house to take a shower. Mid-cleanup, a decorator...
Why didn't he just get help whenever he first needed it? Why didn't they just give him the help they wanted him to get when he first needed it? She even said, does he have to kill someone for him to get help? And it's fucked up that it had to go that far.
Walks in for work and finds Daniel just standing there, naked, covered in blood. Daniel casually goes, "Sorry about this, mate," and walks out like it's no big deal. Obviously, the decorator called the cops, and they caught up with him. When they searched him, they found this bizarre letter he wrote to himself under his nickname Zippy, bragging about the murders and saying he wanted to be a famous serial killer, like 10 victims minimum. They also found a magazine called Freddy Krueger's Nightmares. He told police that voices were telling him to be like Freddy Krueger, and that he wanted to spend a day living exactly like that character. Well, that day ended with 6 life sentences, and the judge saying he would never get out. And, well, he never did. At least not alive. In 2007, Daniel claimed his own life in prison using pieces of a broken CD. And no, it wasn't a Freddy Krueger DVD.
Thanks for adding that.
Thierry Gerardine found inspiration from Scream. Next is this Belgian truck driver named Thierry Gerardine. Back in 2001, Thierry was 24 and just a lonely guy driving trucks for a living. No criminal record, no history of mental problems. Seemed pretty normal to everyone who knew him. He lived just a few doors down from this 15-year-old girl named Allison Cambier. I know you can probably see where this is going. Allison would stop by Thierry's place sometimes to swap videotapes and just chat. She was friendly with the neighbors in general. On November 16th, which by the way was supposed to be her 16th birthday, she came over for what should have been a routine visit. That's when Thierry decided he was going to try something. When Allison shuts him down, this dude completely loses it. He tells her to hang on a sec and walks into the other room where he's got something stashed away, this Scream costume with the black robe, and that creepy ghost face mask from Scream. While he's in there, he grabs 2 huge kitchen knives. When he comes back out wearing all of this, he puts his hand over Allison's mouth so she can't scream, and stabs her 30 times. Just absolutely brutal. Basically tore open her whole left side. After he kills her, Thierry actually carries her bloody body over to his bed and places a rose in one of her hands like he was trying to make it romantic or something. He then picks up the phone and calls his dad and some work buddy to tell them what he did. Yes, he confessed immediately after. And when the cops showed up and started asking questions, Thierry didn't even try to lie about it. He told them straight up that he'd been planning this whole thing and that the Scream movies gave him the idea. He got life in prison. Vadim Messages and the Matrix. What if this isn't real life and just a computer simulation we all live in? If you don't already know, that's the plot from The Matrix. Well, some killers have decided to use that exact premise as their defense in court, and surprisingly, it's actually worked a few times. The whole thing started around 2000 with this Swiss...
What do you mean it's worked? Like, they got out? They were...
exchange student named Vadim Messages who was living in San Francisco. So Vadim was 27 and had some serious mental health problems. He was getting high on crystal meth pretty regularly. He was also completely obsessed with the Matrix movies, a clear recipe for disaster. In May of 2000, Vadim's landlady was really getting on his nerves, and he started thinking that she was giving off these quote-unquote evil vibes. According to him, he was scared to death of being quote sucked into the Matrix, so he figured that the only way out was to kill her. And that's exactly what he did. He shot her, then literally skinned and chopped up her body before tossing her torso in some dumpster at Golden Gate Park. When cops grabbed him, he just told them straight up he did it because of the Matrix. And it worked because a judge bought into his insanity plea, and the case never even made it to trial. But he wasn't the only one to pull off such a thing. 2 years later, there's this bartender named Tonda Lynn Ansley in Hamilton, Ohio, who walked up to her landlady. Coincidental that it was also a landlord. So anyway, she finds her on the street and shoots her 3 times in the head. Tonda claimed her landlady and 3 other people, including her own husband, were messing with her mind and making her have these dreams that weren't actually dreams. It was the Matrix. She thought killing the woman was totally fine because it wasn't happening in the real world. Her insanity thing worked too. It got to a point where it seemed like an easy way out for anyone really. For instance, Joshua Cook in Virginia, a 19-year-old who was absolutely nuts about the Matrix. He had the poster hanging on his wall. He dressed up like Neo in this black coat and literally wore out his DVD from watching it over and over. In 2003, he grabs a shotgun that looks just like the one from the movie poster and kills his adoptive parents. Josh's lawyer tried saying he genuinely thought he was living inside the virtual reality of the Matrix when he did the murders. But the prosecution was like, what? Josh's 911 calls right after the shooting sounded pretty aware of what was real. He's talking about getting the death penalty, not saying anything about being stuck in some movie. Josh ended up pleading guilty and got 40 years. Turns out he actually had schizophrenia, and both of his real parents had paranoid schizophrenia as well. Anyway, this whole Matrix defense got so popular that Warner Brothers actually had to come out with a statement saying it was disturbing and irresponsible to connect their movies to real violence. John Hinckley and Taxi Driver. Now, before there was a Matrix defense or people blaming horror movies for their crimes, there was John Hinckley Jr. and Taxi Driver. This case basically started off the whole...
I think I know what Taxi Driver is, but... yeah, I've never seen it. Is it a horror movie? Best movie of the 70s. Drama, crime, drama. I want to start a Patreon.
Well,
I
trend
gotta
of
get there
killers
first.
using movies as their excuse in court. John Hinckley was this 25-year-old man from a rich family who just couldn't get his
Could've
life
watched that on
together. He
Patreon.
dropped out of college, went to LA trying to be some songwriter, and basically just wandered around the country feeling sorry for himself. Then, in 1976, he watched Taxi Driver, a movie about this lonely cab driver named Travis Bickle, who's completely cut off from society and decides he's gonna assassinate a presidential candidate to impress this woman who shot him down. And that actually pretty much sums up John Hinckley's life. But there's more, of course. The girl in question, for example, was none other than Jodie Foster. So, to impress her, he starts dressing exactly like Bickle, army jackets, combat boots, all of it. He's keeping a diary just like the character, and even drinking peach brandy because that's what Travis drinks in the film. But in real life, Jodie Foster goes off to Yale in 1980, and John literally packs up and moves to New Haven just to stalk her. He's sending her these love letters and poems, calling her all the time,
My bad.
leaving messages. This goes on for months, and since she's not giving him the attention he wants, John starts having these fantasies about hijacking planes or killing himself right in front of her. You know, just to get her attention. But instead, he comes up with what he thinks is this genius plan. He's gonna shoot the president to impress her, just like in the movie. So the dude follows President Carter around during his campaign and gets within like 20 feet of him at some rally. On March 30th of 1981, John's reading the newspaper and sees that President Reagan's gonna be at Washington Hilton. He spends all morning writing this letter to Jodie Foster, explaining what he's gonna do. Then he hops in a taxi and heads to the hotel. When Reagan walks out, John just starts firing. All 6 shots from his gun. He hits Reagan, Press Secretary James Brady, some police officer, and a Secret Service agent. He gets tackled immediately, and then they haul him off to jail. During his trial, his lawyers actually played Taxi Driver right there in the courtroom as evidence, with John totally mesmerized by it. At the end, he gets found not guilty by reason of insanity and spends 35 years locked up in a psychiatric hospital. And you won't believe this, but he got out in 2016, and now he's got a YouTube channel where he posts music. Alright guys, that's gonna be it for this
What?
video. If you guys...
He got out and now he's just doing this. He tried to kill the president. Not current president, but one of the presidents. And they gave him insanity? 35 years? I don't know how I feel about that. That was W videos. I like.